Welcome back. We've got chapters 2 and 3 from Learning How to Learn today, and we're going to read and annotate along the way or do some of it. All right, let's start by looking at our essential question. How can brain science help me to learn better? Well, we're going to find three different connections between the overall book, which I'm going to put a yellow dot above, and the chapters that we're focusing on, which I'm going to put another yellow dot above, right? I'm going to be using yellow to highlight. We're going to be using green to highlight. And we're going to be using blue to highlight. So let's say you want to go with blue first. Well, I notice one really important connection. I see thinking over here. And I happen to see the same thing here, thinking. If you could go find the other two or find the original three, that is your prerogative. Please take a moment right now to do so. Hoping you found some good connections that can help us answer the question, how can brain science help me to learn better? Here's the prompt, and we're going to break it down in a moment. Let's take a look at it first. If a general or a coach or a student wants to win, they've got to be strategic. Identify one strategy from chapters 2 and two strategies from chapter 3 that would help you as a learner. Use evidence from the passage to support your response. Well, I know for my part, I see the word strategic and strategy a lot. So I want to put a red dot on strategy. Now, the other parts seem to have to do with chapters 2 and chapters 3, right? And being a learner. So I'm going to have strategy, and I'm going to put this on learner. Please have your red dots match my red dots. Good work. So we're going to read the text for the first time and annotate along the way. Slide 5. Let's take a moment and we're going to label a question, and we're going to find something that seems important on this page. Okay? So let's take a moment. Let's say you don't have a working computer today. Then you'll be taking notes either in your notebook or in the My Perspectives textbook. This is a custom one today, so you might be just writing it down on a piece of paper. Take a moment, and what we're going to do is put our question mark where we think it belongs on this page. Is there anything that you have a question about? Well, in just modeling it for y'all, I have a question about this word diffuse. What does diffuse mean, right? What could it mean? That's my question. So what does diffuse mean? I'm just on that first step here, right? We can get to other steps as we go along, but just for our first go through, we'll go with the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Now, I need to find the big idea. What do I think is an important idea on this page? And I have to put my light bulb there. Well, I see the word important is big. I see the word diffuse is big. So it seems like there might be an overlap here. It seems that the big idea and a word I don't know are the same thing. Please make your page look like my page. Excellent work. Now, as we go through this chapter, we're going to follow along with the author, Dr. Barbara Oakley. She'll be reading the book out loud. So as we go through it, this is chapter 2, Easy Does It. We're going to be finding some places that we have questions about and some parts that seem important to us. Sometimes I'll do it for you. Sometimes you'll do it for yourself. You just have to listen close. Let's go ahead and get this book started.
Chapter 2. Easy Does It. Why trying too hard can sometimes be part of the problem. Has your teacher or your mom or dad ever told you to pay attention or to focus? You've probably told yourself to do it. That's because it's easy to become distracted. Sometimes whatever is going on outside the window seems more interesting than what's right in front of you. You can't help but think ahead to things like friends or lunch. Getting distracted is always bad, right? Maybe not. Let's see. Picture Picture a chess game with a young boy on the left, and he's playing against a guy on the right. The boy is standing, looking away from the guy. The boy's rude, isn't he? Typical 13-year-old. No concentration. Ever heard adults say things like that? They usually blame it on smartphones. 13-year-old.
So we'll stop there for this page, right? My question I could ask is getting distracted is not always bad, right? Maybe not. Let's see. Why would being distracted be a bad thing, or why would it sometimes be a good thing? I have questions that I don't know the answer to, right? So it seems like they're talking about distractions here in this paragraph, distractions here in this paragraph, and a distracted person in this paragraph. So it seems like this idea of getting distracted is also very important. Take a moment for your screen to look like mine. Do do do. All right, let's pick it back up with slide
Magnus
7.
Carlsen and legendary chess genius Garry Kasparov playing speed chess at the Reykjavik Rapid in 2004. Kasparov was surprised that Magnus wandered off, looking at other games. Garry Kasparov is one of the greatest chess players of all time. Magnus is not concentrating, so he must have no chance of winning, right? Amazingly, Kasparov didn't win the chess match. It was a tie. The world's best chess player couldn't defeat what appeared to be a hopelessly distracted 13-year-old. Surprise! Sometimes we need to lose concentration so we can think more clearly. Zoning out occasionally, not all the time, can be useful when you're learning or problem solving. Magnus returned to the table and focused on the game again. He had taken a little break so he could focus better when he returned. The message of this chapter is that sometimes you need to be less focused in order to become a better learner. How can that be? You've got two ways of thinking. In the last chapter, I mentioned the word neuroscience, the science of the brain. Neuroscientists use new brain scanning technology to look inside the brain and understand it better. Neuroscientists have discovered that your brain works in two different ways.
Before we find out about those two different ways of thinking, we can put our question here. What machine is this? What does this machine do? You could ask a question there. Another idea is that there's two different ways of thinking, and neuroscience has sort of pinpointed what those two ways of thinking are. You can put your big idea next to this word neuroscience. It seems important to understanding what's going on in this chapter. Slide 9.
We'll call these two ways of working the focused mode and the diffuse mode. The word diffuse means spread out thinly. Both modes are important in helping you to learn. Focused mode. When you're using your focused mode, it means that you're paying attention. For example, you might be trying to figure out a math problem, or you might be looking at and listening to your teacher. You focus when you're playing a video game, putting together a puzzle, or learning words from a different language. When you're focusing, you're putting specific parts of the brain to work. Which parts are working depends on what you're doing. For example, when you're doing multiplication problems, focusing will use different parts of the brain than when you're speaking. When you are trying to learn something new, you must first focus intently on it in order to turn on those parts of the brain and get the learning process started.
Please take a moment and drag your light bulb and put it on top of focus mode for a moment. What I would like you to do is to find a part of this page that seems important and to put your light bulb on that spot. Please take a moment to do that right now. All right. Did you notice that there was a part that was in bold? Well, that to me attracts the eye and seems like it would be an important part. Specifically, you must first focus. I'm going to put my light bulb on that. Perhaps yours is somewhere else. Slide 10. Follow along, please.
Diffuse mode. If that's focused mode, what is diffuse mode? Diffuse mode is when your mind is relaxed and free. You're thinking about nothing in particular. You're in diffuse mode when you're daydreaming or doodling just for fun. If your teacher tells you to concentrate, you have probably slipped into diffuse mode. When you're in diffuse mode, you're gently using other parts of the brain that are mostly different from the parts you use when you are focusing. The diffuse mode helps you make imaginative connections between ideas. Creativity often seems to pop out of using the diffuse mode. It turns out that your brain has to go back and forth between focused and diffuse modes in order to learn effectively.
Please take a moment, and on slide 11, I'd like you to take your question mark, and I'd like you to take your light bulb, and I'd like you to find part that you have a question about and a part that seems important. When it comes to the question that you have, when we're done with this slide, slide 11, I'd like you to be able to ask your question, whether it starts over here at one, who, what, when, where, why, and how, whether it's from step two, how would you compare diffuse and focused mode, for instance? Maybe step three, how is this related to my learning? Or step four, what information can you gather to support your author's idea? What could you research more online to improve your understanding of this topic? All right, take a moment, please, right now. And I'd like you to, on slide 11, to find a part that seems important and to find a part you could ask a question about. Nice work. Continuing on slide 12, let's play pinball.
Let's play pinball. To better understand focused and diffuse modes, let's turn to a game called pinball. It's easy to play. You just pull back on a plunger. Once you let the plunger go, it hits a ball up onto a table. You score points as the ball bounces around on the rubber bumpers. Meanwhile, flashing lights and wacky sounds go off. You use the flippers on the lower portion of the table to keep the ball up and bouncing as long as possible. A pinball machine. You can find video games based on pinball. Even today, it's fun to play. Pinball tables are kind of like your brain. Their bumpers can be closer or farther apart, depending on the table. When the bumpers are close together, it's like your brain in focused mode. The ball bounces around rapidly in one small area before running out of energy and falling down. Imagine that your mental ball leaves a trail when it travels. That's like your focused mode. You make trails in your brain when you're focused. These trails are laid when you first learn something and begin to practice using it. For example, let's say you already know multiplication. If I asked you to work a multiplication problem, your thoughts would move along the same multiplication trails that had already been laid in your brain. The diffuse mode is different. In this mode, the table's bumpers are much farther apart. The thought ball travels much more broadly around the table, hitting fewer bumpers. Our brains act like both kinds of pinball machine. If we want to shift from thinking about the details to thinking freely about the bigger picture, we have to shift from focused to diffuse mode. You need two tables, but importantly, your brain can be in only one mode at a time. The zombie can't play with two machines at once. Here's a fun way to get a sense of the difference between the two modes. The focused mode, eyes on the prize. The diffuse mode, eyes on the flies.
Take a moment And we're going to backtrack a little bit because you'll notice that we went to a few slides forward, past the pictures, then we passed this little Vocaroo, and we came here. I need everyone to please be on slide 14. The directions on slide 14 read, reread the underlined portion out loud on Vocaroo. Well, Mr. Service, how do I open up Vocaroo? Here is this thing that says, here is the link to vocaroo.com. You'll click on that, and it'll bring you to this screen here. You'll click this, and after you click this, it starts recording everything that you say. Then you'll go back to this tab here, and you'll read everything that's underlined in red or red. Let's try this right now. I'll show you how I do it, and then you can do it on your own and elaborate. Imagine that your mental ball leaves a trail when it travels. That's like your focused mode. You make trails in your brain when you're focused. These trails are laid when you first learn something and begin to practice using it. For example, let's say you already know multiplication. If I asked you to work a multiplication problem, your thoughts would move along the same multiplication trails that had already been laid in your brain. To see what I mean, take a look at these pictures, focused and diffuse. It's asking to explain what is going on in the picture of the focused and diffused heads. Well, use this red part as your sentence starter when you're saying this out loud. What is going on in the picture of the focused and diffuse heads is the left side, ba 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 ba, and the right side, this, and that. You're going to take a moment now to record that. When you're done, you will then pause it, or stop it rather, and you'll get this screen. You'll click Save and Share, and then over here, these two overlapping boxes here, you'll click those. It'll say copy to link to clipboard. Then you go over here and you'll press the control button and the letter V as in Vera or vary. And you'll put that link right there. Please take the time to do this on your own. Excellent work. So take a look at these two pictures. Eyes on the prize, eyes on the flies. Slide 16, let's get it.
Switching between focused and diffuse modes. If switching between modes is so important, how do we do it? Well, if we want to focus on something, it's easy. As soon as we make ourselves turn our attention to it, the focused mode is on. Your thought ball goes swooshing around on that table. Unfortunately, it's difficult to keep our attention on something for long periods of time. That's why we can sometimes fall into diffuse mode and begin daydreaming. Your mind stays in focused mode as long as you keep using the flippers. But when you let go of the flippers, your mind goes free. The ball drops down onto the diffuse table. Diffuse mode is when we're not focusing on anything in particular. You can enter diffuse mode by just letting go and not concentrating on anything. Going for a walk helps, or looking out a window from a bus, or taking a shower, or falling asleep. Many famous people have had great insights when the events of the day were sloshing around during sleep. It also seems that focusing on something else can take us temporarily into diffuse mode related to what we're not focusing on. When we focus on cuddling our dog, we're not focusing on the math problem. When we're focusing on someone else's chess game, we're not focused on our own chess game. This is why, when you're stuck on a math problem, you can instead switch your focus to studying geography for a while. Then you can make a breakthrough when you return to the math. But it seems that the best ways to give your diffuse mode a chance to work out a difficult problem are through activities like sleeping, exercising, or going for a ride in a vehicle. Kids with ADHD sometimes like to imagine that their focused pinball table has a few extra holes in it. These holes offer a hidden advantage. They boost creativity. If you have ADHD, the extra holes also mean you need to work your mental flippers a little more often than other kids to keep your thought ball on the focused table. ADHD means attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Loosely, it means having challenges with paying attention and controlling impulses. All kids have this to some degree, but with ADHD, it's even more noticeable than usual. How do you work the flippers more? Participate as much as you can by asking questions, writing on the chalkboard, distributing activities among your partners, and working with them whenever you have an exercise together. Kids who have problems paying attention like to imagine that their focused mode has a few extra holes in it. This may mean they have to work their mental paddles harder to get the ball back up into the focused mode whenever it might fall out. But it also means they can naturally be very creative. Not a bad trade off. Getting stuck. There are two ways you can get stuck when you're trying to solve a math or science problem, or when you're trying to learn something new, like how to play a chord on the guitar or perform a specific move in soccer. The first way you can get stuck happens when you don't catch the initial explanation. Unfortunately, with this kind of stuck, going into diffuse mode won't be much use. You haven't loaded anything into your focused mode. Your best bet is to go back and look at the examples and explanations in your notes or the book. Or ask the teacher to explain again. Or look on YouTube for an additional explanation. But don't let yourself get distracted by other videos. The second way you can get stuck is when you've studied or focused carefully. You've loaded the explanation into your focused mode. But as you begin to work the problem, play the chord, or make the move, you still find yourself stuck. You grow more and more frustrated. Why can't you get it?
Please take a moment and I'd like you to find a place where you have a question and a part that you think is an important idea on slide 20 on this page. Please take the time to do that now. Excellent work.
The reason you get stuck is that you haven't given your brain's diffuse mode a chance to help out. The diffuse mode can't get going until you take your attention off what it's focused on. Like Magnus Carlsen, the chess player I mentioned earlier, sometimes you need to take a break in order to coax your brain's diffuse mode to come to the rescue. Get your mind away from the situation for a while. It opens up your access to the brain's diffuse mode. Alternatively, focus on something different. For example, if you're working on algebra, you could switch to studying geography. But keep in mind that your brain also needs a little rest sometimes. If there's something you tend to get stuck at, start with this subject when you are studying. That way you can go back and forth to your other classwork over the course of the afternoon and evening when you might find yourself getting stuck. You don't want to leave your hardest subject to the end when you are tired and have no time for diffuse learning. When you're in diffuse mode, your brain is working on the problem quietly in the background, although you're often not aware of it. The thought ball in your mind is whizzing around your diffuse mode table, and it can bump into the ideas you need to solve the problem. When you take a break, how long should it be? This depends on you and how much material you need to cover that day. 5 or 10 minutes is a good break time. Try not to make your breaks too long. You want to finish so you'll have part of the evening to relax. Important learning tip. Don't jump to conclusions about whether or not new learning strategies work. Don't try switching just once between focused and diffuse modes while you're studying and then decide that it doesn't work for you. Sometimes you have to go back and forth several times between focused and diffuse to figure something out. You need to focus hard enough on trying to understand the material before you take a break. How long should you focus? As a rough guideline, if you find yourself stuck after at least 10 to 15 minutes of trying, maybe 3 to 5 minutes if you are younger, it may be time for a break. When you do take a break, you need to make sure it's long enough for you to get your mind completely off the material. How long it takes can depend on a lot of factors. For example, let's say you have to suddenly get up and give a 10-minute presentation in front of a group. Surprise! The excitement and sudden total focus on giving your talk can pull your mind completely off whatever you were working on before. When you return, even after being gone for just 10 or 15 minutes, you can find yourself looking with fresh eyes at whatever you were stuck on. But other times, even several hours isn't enough to really get your mind off it. In that case, a good sleep can work wonders. It's worth sticking it out and experimenting with the process. Going back and forth between focused and diffuse modes will help you to master virtually anything, whether it's geometry, algebra, psychology, basketball, guitar, chemistry, or any other subject or hobby you're interested in learning. Use these diffuse mode tools as rewards after focused mode work. General diffuse mode activators. Play a sport like soccer or basketball. Jog, walk, or swim. Dance. Enjoy being a passenger in a car or bus. Ride a bike. Draw or paint. Take a bath or shower. Listen to music, especially without words. Play songs you know well on a musical instrument. Meditate or pray. Sleep, the ultimate diffuse mode. The following diffuse mode activators are best used briefly as rewards. These activities may pull you into a more focused mode than the preceding activities. It can sometimes be a good idea to set a timer, or they can eat up too much time. Play video games, talk to friends, help someone with a simple task, read a book, message friends, go see a movie if you have the time, watch TV. Summing it up, focused and diffuse modes. Our brains operate in two modes, focused and diffuse. You can think of them as pinball tables that have tightly packed bumpers and spread out bumpers. We need to alternate between these two modes to learn well. Shifting modes. You shift into focused mode by focusing. Grab those flippers on the pinball machine, but you have to let go and wait for the ball to drop on its own to get into the diffuse mode. The bed, the bath, the bus, and simply going for a walk are great ways to fall into the diffuse mode. To be a successful problem solver, focus first. We get stuck in problem solving when we don't first prepare our brain by focusing on the basics. Don't just dive into problem solving without studying the explanations first. You need to lay some basic trails on the focused pinball table. Take breaks to get new problem solving perspectives. We can also get stuck on a difficult problem even when we've prepared properly. In that case, be a little like the chess playing Magnus. Wander off for a while and see what else is going on. Take a break, but come back to the game or you'll lose for sure. You can choose to go into focused mode, but the diffuse mode is trickier to fall into. The bed, the bath, and the bus, or simply walking, are great ways to summon this more relaxed state of mind. Check your understanding.
All right, for the
See
check
how
your
well.
understanding, we're going to type the questions over to the right, and I'm also going to give you some sentence starters to go along with them as well. All right, this is just something that you can take the time to write on your own, but you can also follow along with the video. I'm just going to play a little bit of music while I type them. You're just going to hear music and the sound of me typing. Go ahead and please write down those questions 1 through 5 in the block to the right. And then after number 5, you've also got number 6 on the next slide, slide 27. All right. So you'll obviously need time to answer those, and perhaps you'll be doing them with a partner, in a small group, or with your teacher. Once we're done, then we can talk a little bit more about what we might do to answer that prompt that's asking us about the end of chapter 2 and the difference between focus and diffuse mode, and write an essay analyzing the relationship. We'll look at a little sample essay there too. All right, so please take the time to answer these questions on slides 26 and 27. Best of luck and great work.